Alright. I know I've talked about cars a lot and how I think they're possible and how I think they're likely coming sometime after horses, and I could even say the same thing about fairies. But what I want to talk about today is not really a receipt, but some interesting information from an old thread on the Sim forums a long time ago, back right after the Sims 4 base game first released. This was a forum post by Sim Guru Max, which is a retired sim guru now. Of course, this was brought up on the forums recently on June 26th by a user titled Simmer Origin, so huge shout out to them. This is a screenshot from a thread titled Simulation Tech Talk, and in this thread, they kind of talked about why horses and cars are very hard to implement, and I guess why we don't see a pack that introduces horses or cars earlier on in a game release. Of course, this response was actually to a user that wrote, "Is it hard to do horses and cars with animations for The Sims 4? There's a lot of talk and a lot of speculation about how cars just simply aren't possible in The Sims 4 because the worlds are closed. Yes, we have closed worlds as well in The Sims 2, and they are arguably even more closed than they are in The Sims 4, because in The Sims 4 at least we have semi-open neighborhoods, so I feel like there's still a lot that can be done. I feel like they could still animate cars along the roads, of course before hitting loading screens. But let's dive into the explanation given by SimGuru Max for both horses and cars, and the reason why I want to bring this up and show you guys this is because even though cars obviously aren't animals, it seems like they are connected in a way with how routing and pathfinding and all of that works in the game, and I guess they weren't very optimistic at first with horses considering why they're here in this post from 2014, but now, as you know, we are getting horses in The Sims 4. The pack's been announced. We have a release date coming later this month in July, so I don't know guys, we have the Sims team using car emojis over on TikTok, and now that we're getting horses when they kind of didn't seem possible or they seemed hard to animate and implement, seeing cars here in this post really makes me think that if they've cracked the code in terms of routing for horses, I guess cars are very much so possible as well. So let's read a little bit of this here from Sim Guru Max. Horses and cars are very different animals. In fact, cars aren't even animals. See what I did there? Let's start with cars because they are simpler. Okay, so if horses are more complex and we're getting them now, I guess this really increases the chances for cars and also increases my hope to see them as well. The main problem with cars is making room for them in the world. Parking, driveways, garages, streets, routes. This is also a problem for horses, but we can reuse some amount of the solution for both. The main issues relate to the layout of the player's lot, the lot boundary with the street, and how to standardize parking spaces both on lot and along the street so cars don't clip into each other or the ambient traffic. There is additionally some animation costs to animate Sims getting in and out of cars, but that's not too bad. We also need to animate the cars driving, but that is also not too bad since wheels turning and rotating is very simple. They kind of already have that aspect down, and I want to comment on that first because we got bikes, guys, and those have what? Turning wheels. We have that in the game. We don't have to worry about that. We also have the animations of Sims getting on and off of bicycles. That's down. No, those things cannot be reused for cars because Sims get in and out of cars a very different way that they get on and off of bikes. And of course with cars, you're gonna have 4 turning wheels instead of 2, but you see my point when I say that because they've done what they've done with bikes, that the process for doing those similar animations with cars is probably a lot easier. Even though the animations are not the same, I definitely think it's very possible. And even if the cars don't necessarily go anywhere, it would still even be nice to have cars that your sim can just keep in the driveway, not moving, that you can get in and out of. I've talked about this before. Fixer-upper cars, cars that you could woohoo in, sit back, listen to music, music, converse with people, chill, have a fun time. There's so many activities that you can do inside of a stationary vehicle. It does not have to move. Though I don't want that to be the limits of vehicles if they are added to the game. I definitely want them to do more, but just speaking worst case scenario, I would not be mad if that was the case, or at least the case to start. So now moving on to horses. SimGuru Max writes, horses are much harder and get into why pets is often the third or fourth expansion. Horses have an actual walk cycle. They need to plant their feet and turn realistically as they follow routes. If we just animated a horse during a walk style and then lerped it, linear interpolation across the path, it would look extremely bad going around even slight corners due to foot sliding and the horse rotating around a pivot point in the center. Also, it would clip like crazy through everything because our entire routing system is based on sim size and turning radius. The routing system needs to be expanded to account for something large and or oblong like a horse or a dog. The main sticking point is that we have a much higher standard for animation quality on The Sims than most games do. We take things like foot planting versus sliding very seriously, and we wouldn't want to ship the version of horses that most games ship with. Just look at the rampant foot sliding and glitchiness of the equine in a game like Red Dead Redemption if you want to know what I mean. And I know exactly what SimGuru Max is talking about. And after reading this paragraph, there's a lot of things that I want to say. The first thing is that, well, we kind of already have a step out of the way. We've already gotten The Sims 4 cats and dogs. I'm sure that kind of opened up a lot of doors for them with animations and making sure that, you know, this would be good. And we've even seen now with the latest Inside Max's stream that the movement and animation of the horses is going to be very good. We've seen them move and pivot around corners, and they actually lean and curve into them as they run around. So a lot of what he's talking about here that seems to be a concern or a challenge, it seems like they've actually successfully are implementing, and I'm using air quotes, but you can't see because obviously the pack's not out yet. So I don't want to judge it too soon. We don't know how buggy it's going to be. We don't know how it's going to look and stuff in game when we're fully playing with it. They just kind of showed us a demo from their end, but it seems like since reading this, and this is why I want to bring this up, that it's definitely possible, guys. If they have been able to do with horses what they say they've been able to do, comparing it to here when they kind of don't seem very confident, then that makes me more confident about cars and why I think they are very, very possible, especially now after we're actually getting a horse pack after receiving a previous animal expansion, cats and dogs, and also we've received bicycles and stuff, so we're kind of a step there, if that makes sense. Maybe not all the way, but definitely a lot closer than we were back in 2014. SimGuru Max does add on to the end here, added to mention that some of the issues with sliding that plague horses would also be an issue with cars. We have to be careful when authoring their route splines to make the corners shallow to avoid sliding. This also further complicates the boundary between the lot and the street, as it might take weird curves to get the car joined in with the street waypoints. That was definitely one of my main concerns, was how would like lot placement work for the parked cars, because we know that in The Sims 3 you place a parking space and it's a defined rectangle that the car sits on, but with The Sims 3 you don't actually pull out of that space and go on the road. The car vanishes from that spot and appears on the road and then moves and animates on the road, and then when you get to the destination or wherever you need to go, instead of the car pulling into a space and actually animating into it, the car just disappears off the road and either appears in a spot or appears in your Sims inventory. So there's a lot that's left out with The Sims 3 that we had in The Sims 2 that I'm hoping that The Sims 4 takes more after The Sims 2. You know, does that make sense? I don't want to see the vanishing and reappearing. Would I be surprised if they did that? No, it's The Sims 4, but I would love to see it work like The Sims 2, but I can definitely see where the issues would lie, because if you did place a space, like a parking space to where the car sits, and then when you get in it, it pulls out and onto the road, how would the animations work going from that space onto the road? Like obviously for every single lot in every single world, there would have to be unique animations for all of them, because some of the lots don't really seem like there's really really much of a space for cars to pull up into with how the neighborhood is designed around the lot. You know, there might not be a pathway to where the car can get from the main road onto that lot. Some worlds are more tricky than others, but in worlds like Willow Creek, most of the lots are kind of either parallel or perpendicular to the road, so you can kind of place a parking space or a driveway anywhere on your lot, and there's a clear, direct path to the road. So it's gonna be different for every lot, and if they were to implement that, they would have to make something that's unique to each lot for every lot in every single world, not just for previous packs, but for packs going forward too, and that is a lot on them. I don't know if I see them doing that, but if we're given a car expansion pack, I think it is more than possible for them to at least create one designated space for each lot where a car or two cars can go. And in Willow Creek, they can definitely make it possible for cars to just park out on the street. Maybe there even isn't a driveway. I don't know. There's a lot of possibilities, but I can also see why a lot of people are like, yeah, this is gonna be a lot for them to do. You know, coming up with where these spaces are put and where these driveways or parking spaces are placed on the lots, or either in the neighborhoods right outside of the lot, and how they actually animate to the roads themselves. I feel like that's a lot, and I might have lost some of you, but I'm trying my best to explain how I'm like envisioning it in my head, you know? I feel like players have a lot of questions, and it's not just about horses or cars or other things, but sometimes we just get very short, vague answers on Twitter from gurus saying, oh, that's not possible, or that's hard. But there was a time where we actually had a thread on the forums where these devs went into detail on why something wasn't possible. And I wish what I just read to you guys, we got more of today. I know I don't want to make it sound like we are owed that, but that was so nice to be able to have some insight and know, okay, this was really challenging for them and this is why it was challenging. Whereas now we just hear, we can't do that, or that's not possible. And then we're just kind of left to speculate. And yes, there's nothing really wrong with that. They don't owe us anything, but that was so nice, you know, to have. And I do want to add that I feel like sometimes the gurus do go into detail a little bit on Twitter. We do get threads. I can remember some clearly from the past couple of expansion packs, but really that's kind of the extent of what we get. It's normally a thread or two within an expansion pack rollout, whereas on the forums, it's kind of like this ongoing discussion where a lot more was said, and these threads go on for dozens and dozens and dozens of pages, whereas even if we do get a breakdown in any sort of way on Twitter, it's definitely not as extensive. So I want to clarify that, because I know you guys are gonna go, Matt, that's not true. They do sometimes tell us why they can or can't do things, and you're absolutely right, but it is not to the extent that they at least used to with this forum thread. I really wanted to share that with you guys because I know there are still so many people, so many simmers that have major doubts about cars, and if we've come this far with animations, not just for cats and dogs, but now we have horses coming, and from what we've seen, they look really good, at least with animations, you know, from that preview stream. I don't want to speak too soon because we don't have the pack yet, but it's at least in quotes looking good. So we've also come a long way with transportation, with bicycles. I think cars are more than possible. I think the real challenge is just going to be driveway placement and where they're going to be parked and how they're going to animate and transition from the lot square to the main road, especially with all the different lot types and all of the different worlds with different terrains and all of that stuff. There's so many different, not just possibilities, but combinations, because there are also a lot of lots that don't connect to any main roads at all. So maybe some lots you just won't be able to have a car parked there. And honestly, I feel like that's okay. I feel like some you should, some you shouldn't, based on how the world looks. And maybe we could get a new world where there's actual designated parking spots. That's one thing that I hope they do not do though. And I will say is, if cars come and they do the same thing they do with every other pack and they make it very exclusive to one world. It seems like they're doing that with horses. We have the equestrian center that's likely going to be a rabbit hole and it's going to only be in this world. And then with Snowy Escape, we have all those fun, amazing things to do in Mount Komorebi, but it's just in Mount Komorebi. I can totally see them doing this with cars, where we get a new world with driveways and parking lots and all sorts of cool things, but then cars are useless in every other world. Yes, it's possible, but I do not want to see that. They need to make this universal for every world, and they also need to do this for other packs. Make what you're adding universal for every other world. Tie in other worlds, tie in other packs. You know, that's another discussion for another video. I feel like I've already talked a lot. I want to hear from you guys on what you guys think about this post from October 2014. What are your thoughts on cars after reading this? Do you think it's more possible for them with not just what we know now, but for how far we are in The Sims 4 and what we've received so far? Share your thoughts below. I love you guys. Happy speculating. Horses is coming later this month, and hopefully we get cars and fairies sometime soon. Take care. So long, and happy simming.